Good evening and welcome everyone to the Risen Esports Rampage Open Week number 3. We have an absolutely fantastic matchup here for you tonight. Two undefeated teams from the secondary set of squads coming at you. Legends Never Die versus EOD Crab Wranglers. I am Gaspump, joined with the fantastic Go for Eno, and we are already underway with this pro draft. Eno, take it away from here.
Yeah, already well underway, like you said, almost all the way through the bans, and quite a few popular picks being taken off the board here with the KO, Leona, Morgana, and Ornn. So, very interesting what we've seen so far. The Leona might actually be a reaction to the Morgana ban, since Ornn can counter Leona pretty decently well thanks to the Black Shield.
Absolutely. Leona, one of those support champions who really has a penchant for going off, if not held down by one of those more defensive support options, like that Morgana. I think a decent choice to take that off the dock, and especially if Crab Wranglers have a competent Leona player. I'd also like to point out here at the Ornn, so much value generated by that passive with those upgraded items coming in later into the game. Sometimes that just deluge of bonus stats is enough to turn these fights in the favor of a team, and I think a very smart choice to be banning off this early in the draft.
Yeah, for sure. Although, quite going through the actual draft very fast right now with the immediate top laner lock-in on that set for Legends Never Die, which is very interesting since usually you save the top laner for the second part of draft, but locking that in now, and it is confirmed to be a top lane set with that Amumu lock-in as well.
Yeah, and set one of those champions who has caught a number of rounds of nerfs there, and yet still seeing play in that role shows that he's a strong kid and can, if he gets ahead, really put the screws in the team going against him. But speaking of picks, bottom lane already locked in fully for the Crab Wranglers here. The Varus Thresh is a classic bot lane. The pick-off potential very, very strong, and I think that's a 2v2 lane that's not to be trifled with.
Yeah, for sure. Because, I mean, between the Chain of Corruption, the Death Sentence, the Flay, and the Box, a lot of potential, not to mention the potential of Burst, especially if it is a Lethality Varus. Probably going to be the on-hit Varus most likely, because you usually only see a Lethality Varus in harder matchups, or if it's like a Mage bot lane. But we will have to see.
Or sometimes you've seen that lethality Varus if that pick ends up going mid lane, which is, I would say, doubtful under the circumstance, but it's always something to consider. I'd like to take a look at this Aphelios and the Amumu. Probably not going to be the same lane together, of course, but the Aphelios pick here is a very strong AD carry. We've seen there is quite a bit of outcry around his release coming on down there, but I feel like after the dust has settled and some adjustments have gone through, Aphelios still a strong pick, has a lot to do, but neither of these AD carries with much potential to escape from the Rampage of an Olaf or a Mumu.
Yeah, for sure, because, I mean, you can't really do much to stop the Olaf coming at you, because he is literally immune to CC, and Aphelios, the only really self-escape he has is the root and slows, so he's gonna be having to rely mostly on that heal from the heal gun if he does have that one up, but that's only if he does have that up, and that's a 2 out of 5 chance, so might not always be available.
Yeah, and that's the difficulty of playing Aphelios. And Amumu, I would say certainly a non-traditional jungle pick against this Olaf. Olaf, one of the champions of the jungle, who really can do a great job of denying and, if able to get ahead, really running over this Amumu in the draft. And I think that that's something you have to consider if you are Legends Never Die, is doing your best to keep the Olaf out of your Amumu's jungle and make it so that your own jungle player has an opportunity to make it through the game without getting dismantled.
Yeah, for sure, and because Amumu, he does bring a ton of damage for a tank, which can catch a lot of people off guard, but like you said, very vulnerable in the early game, and Olaf is one of the best early game duelers in the jungle, if not the best, because the lower he gets in health, the more he heals, the faster he attacks, and the more damage he does, so tends to be a little bit of a pickle.
I think you could probably extend Olaf to just being the best in the early game. I can't think of another champion who spikes quite as hard as Olaf does with an item or two pre-20 minutes, and that's certainly not a threat you want to be staring down the barrel of in the early game if you're LNT, but of course Olaf does have that. The problem with the Cinderella story is that your carriage turns back into a pumpkin at midnight, and after about 25 minutes, Olaf stops being quite the same level of threat. And when you're looking at a composition with the Thresh and the Maokai, you're looking at an end game for EOD that is maybe not as high damage as you might want, especially when you are across the map from Syndra, whose burst potential is terrifying and also a meme.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, everyone always memes about how Syndra only has to click R on you and you die, but EOD, they're going to be really having to rely on the Varus and Rumble in the late game for damage, because obviously Maokai's going to go full tank, Olaf's going to fall off a decent bit. Granted, with the Conqueror that most Olafs have been running from what I saw, that does help you keep a lot of damage, not to mention the healing is nice.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's just the Thresh, and Thresh not exactly known for his damage outside of lane.
I mean, Mexican Joker's Olaf here is certainly going to be a threat against Syndra and the Aphelios, but later into the game, he's not going to have that ability to really burn them down quickly, which means that Transio's Syndra is going to really kind of have his pick of the litter for ultimate targets here. Both Chubby Hugs and Unbound are very good candidates for that if the Syndra if the stun comes down from the Syndra. Those can both lead to very quick kills on both of those targets.
For sure, but it's a matter of can he get to that backline, because sure he has the targets, but if he blows up before he gets there, that's going to be a different story. Granted, EOD, they do have the Maokai here to start off fights, which is always good. You have the Varus to start off fights too, not to mention the Equalizer can be used to start off fights even as well. So at least he's not going to be going in alone, because if he's going in alone on this Olaf, he would just instantly die every fight. But with the help from the Maokai, with the help from those engaging ultimates, it will go a long way for this Olaf to reach the backline and wreak some havoc.
I think another thing that you have to consider about the Maokai ultimate, because you make a very good point about that engage, is the opportunity for Maokai to use the ult as a disengage tool if necessary. And I can think of a number of engages that I've seen in very competitive games where the Maokai ultimate has been a huge asset for a team that is looking to escape from a fight. We'll have to see if EOD has the wherewithal or the positioning to make those kinds of plays here as we finish locking in all of our champions here in the Champions Select portion. Get ready for that spectator countdown, but I think that both of these teams have drafted very interesting compositions and a couple of very diverse strategies hitting the Rift in this first game of our best of three.
Yeah, for sure, because I mean, it is going to make for a very interesting game, because there are a lot of ways we can see these teams trying to approach it. So it's just going to be a matter of what happens once we load onto that Rift.
Exactly. So looking at this 5v5 spread, team to team, who do you really think comes out with the edge after this draft?
It's really going to depend on early jungling, because if this Amumu for Winnie the Doom gets out scot-free in the jungle for Legends Never Die, then Legends Never Die probably just kind of take over the game with their scaling factor. But EOD, they can, of course, get that early lead, especially from counter jungling, but also if they manage to get kills in lanes. So we'll have to see. It honestly will come down to the junglers a lot this game.
And you find yourself saying that a lot, but it is ever a truth about this game. Impetus certainly, though, on the side of the Crab Wranglers. With that being said, we've reached the latter part of Spectator Lane. We'll be right back in just a few more minutes with our first match of Best of 3. Don't touch the dial on the Risen Esports Twitch.tv channel.